I do not seek to understand in order that I may believe. I believe in order that I may understand. This is Anselm of Canterbury, the monk who launched one of the most influential intellectual revolutions in medieval thought. Armed with faith, reason, and one of the boldest arguments for the existence of God ever written. Born in the Italian Alps, trained in Normandy, and finally raising to Archbishop of Canterbury in England, Anselm wasn't just a theologian. He was a builder of bridges between philosophy and theology, between logic and mysticism, between church and state. Anselm lived in a Benedictine monastery at Bec, where he became a teacher, abbot, and one of the sharpest dialecticians of his time. He wasn't writing to skeptics. He was writing for believers who wanted to understand what they believed. This was his approach. Fides cornis intellectum. Faith seeking understanding. Like Augustine, Anselm saw reason as a servant of faith, but where Augustine laid the groundwork, Anselm built a system. His works were filled with sharp dialogues, short, structured, and methodical. He wrote 3 books: On Free Will, On the Devil's Fall, and Why God Became Man. And in them, you'll find the core of Anselm's project, the search for divine justice, moral coherence, and the necessity of God's existence. In his book called Cur Dis Homo, Anselm proposed the revolutionary theory of the atonement. Why did Christ have to die? Not just because God wanted it, but because divine justice demanded it. Humanity owed a debt to God, a debt of honor, of obedience, but we couldn't repay it. Only a being both human and divine could satisfy this infinite debt. And that's why, for Anselm, the incarnation wasn't just a divine gesture, it was a metaphysical necessity. Logic and grace met at the cross. His fusion of Christian doctrine, Platonic metaphysics, and Aristotelian logic became the blueprint for centuries of scholasticism. But Anselm's most famous and controversial contribution came in the Proslogion. There, he offered the ontological argument for God's existence. He begins with a definition. God is, al quid quod, massis non cogitare potest, that in which nothing greater can be conceived. If you can conceive of a being, Anselm says, then it must exist, not just in the mind, but in reality. Because a God that exists in reality is greater than one that only exists in thought. And if it didn't exist, it wouldn't be the greatest conceivable being. It's bold, it's pure logic, and it sparked centuries of debate, challenged by Galileo, reshaped by Descartes, refined by Leibniz, and revived in analytical philosophy today. As Archbishop of Canterbury, Anselm didn't retreat into books. He fought for the soul of the church, literally. In 1107, he secured the Westminster Agreement, ensuring that the English church would remain at least partially independent from moral control. But for Anselm, the greatest freedom wasn't political, it was spiritual. In his dialogues, like De Veritate on Truth, he showed that every creature owes its truth and value to God. The moral goodness is grounded in divine being itself. To live well is to live in harmony with God's nature. Anselm died in 1109, but his legacy lived on. He gave Christian theology a structure, a rigor, and a philosophical heart. He laid the foundation for scholasticism, Thomism, and even rational theology in modern times. Through logic, dialectic, and faith, he asked, what is God? What is justice? What is the soul? And with clarity that still stuns readers today, he answered, the fool says in his heart, there is no God. But the wise man sees that even the fool cannot truly think that.